Or to the distinguished representative of Namibia.
Mr. President, I thank you for convening this meeting on the question of equitable representation on the increase in the membership of the Security Council and other matters related to the Council. I join other member states in congratulating our colleagues, Ambassador of Poland on her reappointment as co-chair and Ambassador of Qatar on her appointment to steer the critical session of the IGN. The Namibian delegation is confident in their capacity to lead the session during the 75th session of the General Assembly. This year marks many milestones for our global parliament, the United Nations. It is our fervent hope that the same jubilation which we have witnessed in the last months due to the commemorative events will translate into more concerted efforts toward a meaningful reformed Security Council. As a member of the Committee of 10, the committee mandated by the African Union Assembly to advance, to promote and to solicit support for the common African position as articulated in the Eswatini Consensus and the Sirte Declaration, I align myself with the statement delivered by the distinguished permanent representative of Sierra Leone on behalf of the African member states. Mr. President, Namibia wishes to reiterate that the common African position as espoused in the Eswatini Consensus and the Sirte Declaration is the only viable option for Africa to be represented in the UN Security Council. It is in line with this position that Africa demands no less than 2 permanent seats with all the prerogatives and privileges of permanent membership, including the right of veto, so long as it continues to exist, as well as 5 non-permanent seats in the United Nations Security Council. We thank those member states that continue to express support for the common African position. To us, this is such a welcome source of encouragement and assurance of solidarity, appreciation, and unconditional confirmation of support for the demand to end the injustice against Africa. Therefore, my delegation is pleased to acknowledge the unambiguous expression of support for the common African position as contained in the Eswatini Consensus and the Sirte Declaration by the respective representatives of the L69, the G4, the CARICOM groups, amongst others. We urge those delegations that have not yet expressed their favorable support to the legitimate aspirations of the African continent to join the growing Eswatini Consensus Alliance because it is the right thing to do. Mr. President, we could not agree more with the emphasis by the distinguished PR of the People's Republic of China in his statement yesterday that we seek a reformed council that will rectify the imbalance between developed and developing countries and serve the international community better to the benefit of all member states. In this way, my delegation believes that we will ultimately address the historical injustice against Africa and deliver more balance between the North and the South. Indeed, it is time that the reform process addresses the imbalance resulting from the determination by some preserved and entrenched self-interest of a few member states who are finding it hard to accommodate the expansion of the Council in both categories to bring about the much-needed fairness and greater equity in the composition of a reformed Council. Mr. President, Africa is opposed to the veto as a matter of principle and natural justice inherent in the UN Charter. But so long as it exists, and as a matter of common justice, it should be available to all permanent Council members. In addition, Africa demands no less than 26 seats in total in the enlarged Security Council. Namibia wishes to reiterate that the selection of African representatives to the permanent category and the selection criteria will be determined by the African Union. There should therefore be no discussion on this issue, and we hope that other negotiating groups will respect this sovereign decision of the African group. My delegation wishes to state that the framework document remains the main reference document preferred by the African group in the IGN, as it is the only document that reflects the positions and views of over 120 member states, including the key elements of the common African position. Namibia hopes that we will all not lose sight of this fact. Mr. President, I believe it was the Greek philosopher Heraclitus who famously reminded us that the only constant in life is change. However, it seems the IGN process has taken this reality to another level where no change has now become the constant in the life of the IGN. We have yet again spent another round of discussions for the umpteenth time, each one of us with varying degrees, lamenting the fact that for the better part of the last 15 years of the IGN, or the last 20 years since the Millennium Declaration, or the last 41 years since the item was added on the agenda of the General Assembly, and certainly since the last reform of the Council, 3 years before I was born, we have made very little progress. Over the last 2 days, I've heard so many of us say how frustrated we are with hearing no new or fresh proposals, ideas, or solutions. Instead, we are repeating same arguments year after year. To say that this is frustrating is an understatement. It is truly incredible that with such high level of frustration amongst the majority of us, we seem resigned to the notion that no change is now the constant, and that by doing the same thing over and over again, we will eventually produce a different outcome. It is simply astonishing how we make up arguments in favor of the need to respect GA rules of procedure to guide GA processes, but conveniently only so when it suits the view we want to take on the reform. My delegation believes that the instruction by our leaders to reform the institution over which they preside give us the power to make the required changes needed for a reformed council. A tremendous responsibility rests on our shoulders. History will be the judge of our handling of this onerous responsibility. Failure to contribute to bringing about a more equitable, a more democratic, a more transparent, and a more accountable Security Council, therefore, is not an option. We have time-tested tools at our disposal to do our work. Now, let us do what is right. As we commence the IGN process for this session, I assure you of my delegation's readiness to engage toward a fruitful outcome for all. Let us redouble our efforts during this session. Let us make history. Let us work towards consensus for a reformed Security Council. Let us reform the Security Council. I thank you.